Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for sticking it out right to the end to hear us take it through the final session. So I'm going to basically paint a picture of what's happening in Barbados, because of course that's what I know intimately. And so obviously, Barbados is a service-based economy, primarily tourism services, as most people know. However, there is a very strong global business sector, which is what over the last 18 months, we have come to transition what used to be called the international business sector, and even before that, the offshore business sector. And the reason that we are looking at it as the global business sector is because of the fact that due to external regulatory pressures brought to bear by the OECD and the EU, what the country was forced to do, government was forced to do, was to harmonize its tax structures for both domestic and what used to be known as international business companies. So whereas you used to have a group of ring-fenced businesses which used to enjoy a tax rate between 0 and 5% depending on what they were doing in terms of the business they were conducting, this was deemed to be non-competitive, and therefore pressure was brought to bear. And what happened is there was a harmonization. So now the entire tax structure for the country is between the 1-5% for all of the companies, the businesses in Barbados, in terms of corporate taxes. And so therefore, the Prime Minister has really been hammering at this message that we need to see ourselves as a hub for global business. And this has become even more important when we see the impact that COVID has had on Barbados and the Barbadian economy. So what has happened is you've gone from a sector, which is the tourism sector, which was supplying about 30% of GDP and really about 50% if you look on the businesses that were supported by tourism. It's gone from that to practically nothing, right? So even though our borders were never officially closed to commercial travel, what happened is because of what was happening with our source markets, for example, even the same Trinidad, which closed its borders, and of course the US, UK, Canada, what happened is our tourism arrivals basically fell off a cliff. So without tourists coming in, then you have the knock-on effect of the fact that we have about 80 hotels, I think 60 hotels in Barbados, and about 80% of them are closed. The majority of them are really just because of tourists who were actually stranded here, unable to return home, that had been their business, or in some cases, because you had repatriation flights where Barbadians were able to return from other countries, they were given the choice of either quarantining in the government isolation centers, or if they were prepared to pay for it, there were certain hotels that were designated as quarantine centers and they could isolate there. So that's what has happened in terms of the tourism sector. And then of course you have the spin-offs such as the restaurants, the tourism attractions, etc. All of those had to be closed as we began a shelter-in-place regime through the emergency directives instituted by government in March, and which are actually only fully easing from next week. And so, therefore, we've had curfews, etc. You've seen a lot of businesses just basically close or have to furlough their staff. And so the Prime Minister actually, in a presentation she made at our National Insurance Scheme award ceremony, virtual award ceremony over the weekend, one of the things she noted is that on a normal basis, the unemployment claims that you would see come in over the course of the year are between 10 and 12,000 unemployment claims. And over the last 12 weeks up to June 19th, we've had over 35,000 claims come in. So you can really see the sort of staggering impact that the closure of our tourism sector has had on the economy. And on the flip side, where I'm from, which is the global business sector, you've actually seen a very little impact in that regard. So we were very, because it's primarily financial and corporate services, these are services that can be delivered from anywhere. So when the shelter-in-place orders hit, my secretariat and many of our member firms were able to swiftly pivot and start working remotely from home, VPN, using a VPN to get into the server, etc. And so therefore we were able to continue to do business. My members were able to continue to do business. And so that's primarily banking and financial services, insurance, logistics, etc. So we are far more impacted by what's happening in terms of the regulatory regime, the same FATCA that you would have heard discussed, FATF that you would have heard discussed earlier, and the impact that's having on, the ability to conduct banking business and things like that. As a spin-off of that, we've had the EU blacklisting our AML regime as of recently, along with Bahamas and Jamaica. So those are the sort of impacts that we have seen. And therefore, it's really started a conversation about, I can't remember who it was, but who mentioned earlier about the dangers of really being a one-trick pony, of having all of your eggs in one basket, So it's really that emphasis on diversification. And what's going to be key to that, as we have found, is the digital economy and being able to harness what is available from a digital services front. So for example, even on a small scale, you saw what was able to happen with small farmers. They were able to, using WhatsApp, using other social media, they were able to promote what they had for sale, and people were able to make orders. And then, a delivery system arose where everybody delivery business, and you were able to, when you were forced to be home and you couldn't go to the supermarket, or you could only go on specific days, you could order through these services and have fresh produce delivered to you, right? And so that sort of thinking and mindset is not going to change. So we are anticipating that we're going to see businesses really hold on to that adaptability and that willingness to do business digitally, right? In order to still thrive during what I know Mr. Farrell had spoken earlier about things returning to normal, but this will be more of a new normal, because really and truly what has obtained before, after about 18 months, it's going to put a lot of traditional business out of business. You're going to have a lot of people on the sidelines, and therefore they're going to have to be able to adapt. So you're going to see people who are willing to retool, to learn new skills, and who are really willing to look at the globe, at the world as their market, and not just Barbados or even the region. Those, we think, are the sort of companies and entrepreneurs who are going to survive in this new dispensation. That is my presentation. Thank you.